where the main vocalist was singing from.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, it's a lot. Let me find. Oh, here's the lathe coming up. Oh gosh, let me just get to it here a minute.
All right. Check. Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome. Sorry to cut a few conversations short. I think dessert is still coming out. But yeah, welcome to the STE. Do we have any people with for the first time? Oh wow, awesome. Welcome. Well, when we come around, we'll try to get some quick introductions from people at your table. My name is Eric Mahoney. I'm the current president of the STE. We have one more meeting next week or next month, June 22nd. And that is going to be my final meeting as president. Oh, so sign up now to be a part of leadership. No, thank you. I've tortured you all long enough. But again, thank you all for being here. If you haven't checked out our website lately, ste-ca.org, check it out. It's got our full calendar on it, and we try to post presentations when we get them and try to keep it up to date. What else? I think we're short on announcements, other than we have 2 new member candidates that submitted. I will get to that. We've got 2 new member candidates. We've got Edwin Solano and Eddie Safarians. And so expect an email from the board in the next couple days, next week time frame, and that will be to get all the current active members' votes to approve their membership. But they've met the requirements of attendance. We'll attach their resumes and their sponsors. What am I forgetting? We've got some we still have board candidates that are going to be announced right after that happens. So if you are interested in running for the board or a leadership position, officer position, get in touch with myself, Howard, wherever Howard is, Lloyd, Ferguson, anybody on leadership, Jeff Longbottom, who am I forgetting? Paul Carey, Mike Buchanan, Bill Hogan. Get in touch with any of us and we will get you plugged in and find a spot for you to contribute in some way. Even if you don't want to be on leadership, if you just want to volunteer, whether that's helping out with the stream or helping coordinate things here day of the event, whatever you can contribute to kind of keep this a lively organization, that would be much appreciated. So anyway, we're going to go around now and do some pass the mic scenarios. So if you have any industry announcements, if you have any job openings, anything of interest to the whole group, feel free to speak up. Don't be shy. And if I could get people to introduce our guests with us tonight at their table, that would be much appreciated. All right. We'll get to Bill, and we've got Katie and Michael from Colorfront. Thank you guys for joining us. Do you guys have anything to announce before?
Save it for the presentation.
Perfect. All right, Eddie, anything? All right, hello, this table. How are we doing? Any announcements? Oh, we have Russell Stacy. I'm sorry, I didn't.
We're good.
Russell's running for president next term. Every table is going to have a president. Any announcements from this wonderful group of people? Welcome, everybody. All right. How about this wonderfully attractive group of gentlemen? Anything? Any announcements? Mark's new. Do you want to introduce Mark?
Oh, this is Mark Cheer. I work with him, and he's a. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, thanks for having me. The steak was good.
All right, all right. Moving on. Hello to this table, Bill.
STE meeting at the Academy on Vine Street next Thursday, a week from tonight, and we'll make sure that it's on repurposing audio assets for immersive audio. So we'll send that out to the STE group also.
Cool. Any other announcements at this table? Any for? Oh, yeah. Let's get an introduction here. Paul, can you do an introduction for us? Who wants to introduce?
I'm Mike Tosti. I'm with IDCLA, and I have Rosanna Marino over here, my COO. Ryan Gladden, Director of Emerging Formats, and a friend of mine, Lauren from Warner Brothers.
Well, welcome. Thank you guys for being here. We're excited to have you. All right, Tom Patterson. Who do we have? Glenn, I know you have an announcement.
So I'm a piper. And I hate when my job is to make everybody cry, and I'm going to make everybody cry in a minute. And I'm not even going to play Amazing Grace. But first of all, I've got to remind everyone here that every Wednesday at Jameson's, we have the Hollywood Beer Association, a spinoff of the Hollywood Post Association. And if you're on a Wednesday afternoon, either Tom will be there and Jay-Z will be there. Jay-Z's upset. He's at the Cannes Film Festival. He's our president. But anyway, now we get on to what I do as a piper. So on Sunday, who knows Bob Blanks? On Sunday is Bob Blanks Memorial. If you are so inclined and you haven't got the information, please email me, text me, whatever, and I will give you the information because he was a pillar. Community. Oh, hello. He was. You're not the first beautiful woman to tell me that. He was a pillar of the pulpit, and I mean, complete post. I mean, we wouldn't without Editel and Encore and Complete Post. Maybe we don't even have a business. So anyway, if anybody needs information on Bob's memorial on Sunday, let me know and I'll send it to you. It's way down south in Capistrano. Boy, Eric, we need, oh, Mike Buchanan was gonna donate some Mike. No, it didn't work. Anyway, and the next thing is I was up in Grass Valley a couple weeks ago playing golf with Robert Nunez, one of the sales managers at Ensemble Designs. And David Wood. Oh. Woody, as we all knew him, passed away while I was there 2 weeks ago. He had some battles with his weight. He had his battles with his food addiction. The family has not released any information as to what actually happened, and understandably, and whatever, but Dave Wood from Ensemble Designs has passed away. And so if we could take 4 seconds to say, love you, Woody. He helped between him and Envision and AJA, they basically helped found Piper Digital. So Woody's close to my heart. Thanks for putting up Sadness. Now let's get some more happiness. Who's got? We got some.
I have no jokes. I am the joke tonight. My class are a little bit. No, in all seriousness, we do need volunteers for the director position, for the president position, et cetera, et cetera. Even if you can't commit the time to do that, it will make their job easier if you can volunteer for something. So reach out to us. STE.info. I'll hand it to you in a second. Eric will remind you, but we do need help to preserve this organization. It's a small, close-knit community, and we enjoy these evenings. And please volunteer to help out. I will volunteer to be a board member again. I will not volunteer to be president, but please help out. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. All right. How is this table doing? Mr. Ray, oh, we'll get to you, Ray Mitchell.
I'd like to introduce Claude Soma back there in the watching the game. It's his first visit here at STE.
Claude is one of our amazing colorists at Paramount, and we're happy to have him with us today.
Hi, Rick Gross from Gravity Media. We have two of our senior engineers here. Tyler Thomas, who is our VP of Engineering, and Paul Windsor, who runs our most sophisticated brand new truck. So I would like you to welcome them. They're very nice, even if they are Canadian. Okay. Please welcome them.
Sorry. Hey, well, welcome to you both.
Whoa. There we go. I spoke with Rick at Riedel, and he's looking for, he actually has like 3 or 4 positions available, if anybody knows. I think one's Riedel. Yeah, I think one is management, and then the others are programming consultants, whatever, system consultant positions.
Gravity Media is always on the make for engineer. If he has
Check.
hello. Okay. For you interest or
All right. Any other announcements anybody's thought of? Job openings or otherwise?
Yeah, just.
All right.
Like from Advanced Systems Group, just
Yes,
want to
sir.
say, yeah, we have some openings.
We have
So I will-
anybody on Zoom?
can you hear me?
Oh, we have something on Zoom.
Okay.
Read it for us, Edwin.
It's John Scheich trying to talk. Can you hear me?
Oh, hold on 1 second. Oh, we literally have somebody from Zoom. Okay. Go for it, Zoom.
One more time, John Scheich from Advanced Systems Group. We do have some openings, so I'll put that in the Zoom chat. And that's on our website, in the career section of our website.
John Scheidt, we will from asg.theirsummator.com. John, what kind of openings are there?
Operational and engineering in the Bay Area, in Los Angeles and other locations.
Operational in the Bay Area and Los Angeles.
And engineering.
If anybody needs that website, you can come and find it here on the chat as well. All right, I think we're going to jump into it. How many people here are familiar with Colorfront or Mr. Bill Feightner? All right. We are so excited that the Bill agreed to come out and share an evening with us. So, without much further ado, Mr. Bill Feightner.
You hear me okay? I guess.
We will we'll do a Q&A at the end. Unless, Bill, do you want questions during, or would you like
Oh,
to
yeah,
help to the
I
end?
think, raise your hand, or I think this is not going to be a real formal thing. Gosh, this is a lot of you and some new faces and some people that I think I know that I've seen in the past. Anyway, great to be here. Good to see you all. I'm going to touch it. I mean, there's so much to cover. We have a short order of time, but the main thing subject area is going to be about color management and color and how important that is. But I don't know, the reference picture, the one that's be seen, which you guys probably left out of, I don't know if you can is on this HDR display here. It's where you're sitting, it's the color's probably not looking so hot at that angle. But that's really the hero thing. And when we start talking about some things. So right now we just put some material up here, and what you're seeing right here is something that went through the whole color management process, and I wanted some moving pictures just to be as filler. So what this is streaming from our transcoder, our software running up in Amazon Cloud, streaming down here real time, and onto a little Mac computer. It could be streaming to your iPhone. And in fact, anybody that's interested in any of this, you can reach out to us and we can give you a link for some of the demo streams that just show some of the stuff. But that's one area. The reason that's important is pre-COVID, we've been pushing remote workflows and proper color management. We've been pushing good color management for years, but everybody was pretty content just to go to the same address and set same. And then COVID sort of and demonstrate technology for putting out reference quality images for several years. COVID came around and all of a sudden there's an interest in it. So anyway, this is just one of we have is this whole system is built around color management, where it can take in on the serving appliance, the SDI, or it can be up in the cloud running in parallel with whatever application you're running. You could be running Resolve, it can be front software up in the cloud, and then be able to see a real picture, see a reference quality picture, and in fact, broadcast to multiple people, broadcast to multiple displays, inside of that, so that it knows what the display is. It adapts the picture, whether it's in this case, we're streaming down HDR. If we had it going to an SDR display, then the color management in there would take it down the SDR properly. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to have, while I'm starting the talk here, maybe Michael launch our transcoder product, where I'm going to do some live demos, and then I have a short little PowerPoint, maybe just to go over some key issues and things that are facing us. How many people here, I guess if we divide, say, are involved more on the broadcast side of things, and then how many are involved, maybe just show of hands that's your primary area of focus. Yeah. And then how many are working more in the file-based workflows? Yeah, it's really kind of 50-50. So that's great, because those two entities used to be very disparate, and now they're merging together, and there's a lot of commonality. So what I'm going to talk about is common to both workflows. Some of the implementations on the broadcast side, since we're still doing live, involve live, hardware that can take live video feeds through, and then of course on the file-based side, running software. So the basic principles, the basic things that are happening, work on both. So why don't we go to and then I can just slide over and get the PowerPoint. I don't know, this is Marcy. Let's say hi to Marcy. Everybody's seen Marcy, okay? Okay, yeah. Anyway, so I'm Bill Feightner, Colorfront CTO, and welcome. One of my big passions for many years has been in color and color management, and just having high quality images and having everybody see high quality images. So here's where we are today. If we're just talking about the delivery side, we've got any and everything. We've got televisions of different nit levels. We've got cinema at a different nit level and a different brightness level. and viewing conditions. We've got HDR TVs, SDR, we've got all sorts of devices. And the point that I want to make is we can't do a separate master, or we can't have a separate, although I've seen this, broadcast truck, one for this, one for that, one for that. I mean, the last time I was out on a broadcast on a sports event with some of our technology, they had an HDR truck and then they had an SDR truck, and I was going, okay, we're both watching the same content. Why do we have to have two separate things? So part of that gets around to how do we manage this? If we have a set of pictures, how do we condense it so that we have a single master? So this oftentimes is talked about in the file-based workflows as a single master workflow. Same thing for live broadcast, single master, that we come in and we distribute to all these different things. And the goal of all of this is that the pictures look the same. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Yeah, so you make deliveries, multiple displays and brightnesses. And the key to the technology I'm talking about is, okay, how do we manipulate these signals or the video things, the pictures, so that they look the same at various nit levels, various displays that have different color primaries. We may have 709 primaries, we may have P3 primaries, we may have 2020 primaries. How do we take one master and fill all of those properly? I mean, we could take the lowest common denominator, an SDR Rec 709 picture, and say, hey, that's what you get. You got an HDR TV, you're still just going to see a Rec 709 picture sitting inside of the HDR, but that wouldn't be taking advantage of the display's capability and potential. So this is sort of a quick thing on different dynamic ranges and deliveries that we have, and you can't make a single master for all that. So what's really important in all of this is that at some point we have our hero picture. That's what we call the creative intent. So we've either in a broadcast truck, somebody set there, has set the adjustments on the cameras that they have a particular look, and he wants everybody with all these different deliverables, be it HDR, SDR, in an HLG wrapper and a PQ wrapper, whatever it may be, to all have the same, to see the same thing. You put them all side by side and they're going to look the same or as close as they can. Obviously, a higher dynamic range picture will have a bigger difference between low lights and highlights, but the basic color, the skin tones, everything else, you're not going to have to reshade the camera for one or the other. That one shading does both. And so a reference master, normally we have a quantifiable display that this is where we make our choices. There's always a creative intent that we put into something. Do we want it to be warmer, colder? Do we want it brighter or dimmer to tell the story? This is important, more important than dramatic type shows versus sports. But even in sports, we say, okay, that's what we want the people to see. So that's what we call our reference master. We see it on a reference monitor. That monitor is quantifiable. And from there, we say, okay, how do we translate that to all the other deliverables? And so people will have the same type of a look. So a typical glass delivery workflow would be, you start with your picture, camera, you have your reference master, you put your creative side into it. In the case of broadcast, this would be in the truck. The VC would sit there and set things, or VCs, and often it's the case when you have many cameras, and you have your reference look, and then you want to go out and feed all the different outputs. So yeah, is a separate grade required for each one? No. So you have the concept of a reference master display. Hopefully this reference master display is the encompasses all of the deliveries. In other words, it's the primary thing, but that may not always be the case. And you can interject out if you still set a look on a smaller canvas or a smaller palette, that with proper color management, you're going to take advantage of the deliverables, say wider color palette or range, but still keep the look. So that's what's important there. So I'm just going to step quickly through these because we don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that. But there are a number of ways of, say that your master range, you have an HDR master and it's larger. In other words, we have this larger thing, or just the feed that comes out of a modern camera has a wide dynamic range and it's larger than what the display can do. Say, for example, we've got an HDR master and we want people on their SDR devices to see it properly. So what do? Well, we could just squeeze it down, just dim down the picture and put it on the SDR display. That would look really bad. They'd just look dark. The faces and everything would be very dark. We'd see all the highlights, but it would just be too dark. Nothing would match. We could just slice off, and that actually there are some standards. 2084 sort of talks about that. If we're going from HDR to SDR, well, let's just chop off the top part. That doesn't work very well. I mean, it crosses artifacts. Clipping is a horrible looking thing. So those things don't work. And the thing is if you just squeeze it down, if you clip something, then the minute it starts getting squeezed, you'll get a hue shift. I don't know if everyone here is involved in that in broadcast, that if you just put a curve and you try to curve it down, well, then the color changes, the hue and the color, and that doesn't look, in other words, it doesn't match. I mean, you've squeezed it down, but it's not gonna match. So might work if the image were just pure black and white, then you could just do a monochromatic curve. If the reference master range is, it's larger, you have all everything, so that the most important thing is to maintain the creative intent. What happens on the other side, and this is a real important thing. In fact, we did a paper at HPA showing this, that we have our reference master is smaller than the deliverable. So say we have just an SDR master, but we got this bigger container that we could deliver to be an HDR. Well, we can reverse that process. The key to all of this is how do you process the engine? You can't put a curve or things like this on it. You are just tweak a color corrector. What we do is what we have is we call our perceptual processor. What does that mean? If we think about the way our eyes work, our eyes are not linear devices by any means. I'll show some slides later that sort of demonstrate that. So if we do these processes in increasing or shrinking dynamic ranges, color palettes, if we have P3 color primaries available 2020 or only 709, if we do all of these calculations and things in a perceptually linear space that behave the way our eyes do, then that's what we do. And that's what we call a perceptual transform. It's based on many measurements on how our eyes respond. This is published data that exists in the real world. We at Colorfront did not have to go out and individually measure people. In fact, we couldn't do that because you need to measure a wide sample set, but there are plenty of data sets available. And if you use this, then, and you do these transforms in this space, then you end up with really good results. So I'm just going to step through some of these. Once again, if delivery has a higher dynamic range than the reference master, you can then expand things and have a higher, and I'll demonstrate some of that. I'll show you on this display where I can create a low dynamic range master and then re-expand it back out. So this all involves color management. In other words, once again, we set it a display. This is my picture. This is my movie. This is my sports show. This is my advertisement. And these are the colors I want people to see, the audience to see. And then when it's distributed to all these wide range of different displays, people are going to see basically the same thing. So, and then also there are times where for example, if you have a reference and it's on a, you've done it, say, for home TV on a smaller screen, and we see it on the big screen, you may want to trim it. You might just say, okay, I can tell the story better if I make a few slight adjustments. Well, a normal color corrector is designed to make creative, impart an artistic intent. When we're doing this type of thing, these are not artistic intents. These are perceptual phenomena, whether you see something large or small. So giving the artist a proper set of tools that work in this perceptual space and are geared at doing these things. For example, if you watch on a given display, you watch it in a bright room, a dim room, such as this, or a pitch black room, and you put the exact same picture on it, the user's going to have a different experience. And that's because our eyes respond differently with how the display relates to the surrounding environment you're in. And so we may need to do what we call ambient sound compensation from a dark to dim or bright to dim. So these are some parameters that you can trim out dynamic range, you may, in HDR, come across, and I've seen this quite a few times, that you've lit a scene or you're outdoors, but this say an actor's standing in front of a very bright window. And in SDR, say that window's 2 stops over fill, or more than that often is the case. And in SDR, you don't see much difference because it's rolled off. We go to HDR, oh wow, look at that window. I see every detail out the window. It looks wonderful, but guess what? My attention is now drawn to that window. So we can do windowing, play on words there, but we can, draw outlines around it and bring it down, or we can have a tool that just adjusts dynamic range. And adjusting dynamic range, if we do it properly in perceptual space, will have the effect of changing the lighting in the scene. In other words, everything comes in, you don't have to tweak colors after you dimmed it down. I don't know how many of you do color correction, but you go on, you turn gamma, you turn something, you tone it down. Now you got to go back in and butts with color, saturations and things. If you do this with the proper transform, then they just fall in. It makes your life much simpler. You can devote your time to the creative side of your art and making it the color and what the viewer sees match the story you're trying to tell. So that's important things. Previewing is always a very important thing, that at any stage when you are doing the mastering on this large mastering display, can we preview what it's going to look like when it's put to a lower dynamic range display, a darker display? This is just showing this an example of SDR to HDR. Now, obviously up here on the display like this is not an accurate, so it's just, it's an example. But you can say, okay, so we can, at a click of a button, can we see the SDR picture? Can we see the HDR picture? Can we see the 48-nit cinema deliverable? These are all important things to have in a color management system, and which we support there. Let's go down here. You may, once again, HDR and SDR. If I'll show you in a little bit where we take a couple example original camera pictures here on the reference display, and I can show it to you in HDR and SDR, but they should look the same. This is just an example. Once again, we don't have HDR on there. We just have a lower dynamic range, and you can only do so much on a projector, but it just shows the concept there. Another big thing in our industry, we've had different color management systems out there that have what's called an ODT, or output transform, and meant for different devices. A lot of color correcting and grading systems have different things built in, but anytime you click between them, they all have a different look. That's okay if you're going to be regrading for each one, but we want to do one grade, lock it, say that's the look of the show, and then change the output transform up and down so that we fill all the different deliverables at the different nit levels and they look the same. So this just shows an example of an example of a mismatch ODT. So here's one for 709. Here's an output transform for cinema, and that's what you actually would see on some systems, and that's not really acceptable. Here is a transform where you have a 100-nit master example with a dim surround, which is for TV, and then a 48-nit cinema. So the relative differences is actually mathematically correct here. It's just, it's the best you can show on a digital projector. So you can see the ODT here is just the same output transform that's feeding the dim surround, the 100, and the one on the right is just making it darker. And then if we go to a perceptually match, where we go through the perceptual transform, taking 100 nits down to 48 nits, then we get a much closer match, even though it's half the brightness of the left, 48 nits versus 100 nits. There's a lot of the reasons behind some of this. There's some well-known perceptual phenomena, and stop me if any time along this you have a question or something doesn't quite make sense. I'm just I'll try to get through this quickly, but there's different things that happen as you change color palette, you change viewing conditions, you change things going lighter and darker. These are things that either a colorist may be aware of or indirectly aware of, knowing that, okay, I'm gonna have to turn these knobs because when I look at this and I'm doing a cinema grade in a dark room, I've got to redo a whole bunch of things to make it feel the same as it did before. But if we can take that burden off the colorist and do as much of it as we can with the proper transforms, then that time, that shrinking time that we're given to allocate to doing color correction and things can be more efficiently used to address the look of the thing and put it into the aesthetic appeal of the movie. So there's things with hue appearance as, you know, the monochrome. In other words, if we just have monochromatic light and we bring it up and down in brightness, we will see a hue shift. So you actually, if you, it may look correct on the vector scope, nothing changed, but our eyes are going to see a slightly different hue. If you add white light to something, this is something a lot of colorists have. You desaturate blue, and all of a sudden it starts looking kind of purple. This is a normal perceptual phenomena. So you've added white light to cold colored things, and they shift a little bit. And this is just the way our eyes work. Stevens effect, Bartleson-Brenneman effect, Hunt effect is an important one. This is one that's talked about a lot in a lot of different forums. That as we increase the brightness of something, things become more colorful. If I have let's say a tabletop model set up and I'm illuminating it with light and I double the amount of light on that, we're gonna, without going through any camera or anything that's looking at it directly with our eyes, it's gonna appear much more colorful than it did when it's darker. And this is the normal thing. These are all phenomena that are part of the perceptual model, so that when we're bringing things up and down, they all fall into place. The chromatic adaptation we just talked about, and not only the brightness of the surround, but also what you're adapted to. I don't know how often, you know, in the old days when we used to have incandescent lamps, which are pretty much non-existent now, you'd be outside in daylight, and we know, you know, daylight's much bluer than the very warm incandescent lamps. Yet once we walk inside the house or something at night, it doesn't look red or warm. Or we walk from the inside to the outside, it doesn't look cold. Our visual system adapts to the average color temperature. So these are phenomena that are very important to put into the perceptual model if you want things to track and match. So once again, a perceptual transform, it integrates all these various aspects that we just spoke about into a data set. And from that, we can make a space that is what we call perceptually linear. In other words, if we go up in brightness, it compensates for all of that. So it's really linear. It's compared to if you look at the mathematics and you graphed it, it looks highly unlinear. You'll see as things get brighter, certain colors will go to the right. This sometimes in broadcast, when we've done these perceptual transforms, it drives an engineer nuts when he's looking at the vector scope. Yeah, but the red or this color was falling here on the vector scope in SDR, but it's slightly different over here. Something's broken. No, that's just part of the model. It's linear. Your eye is seeing it the same. It's just that the vector scope is a linear measurement device. So these are some things that we've had to explain as we're working with people, especially on the broadcast side, because people are really used to looking at their scopes, which are very valuable. You just have to know how to interpret the data that's on them. Here's an example. We've all seen these various visual puzzles out there. Both the left squares and the right squares all have the same brightness level, but the black square at the top, or the dark one there, looks way darker surrounded than it does surrounded by black. Yet if you were to go in there and measure them, they're both the same. And if we do a correction, now they look a lot closer. So this is doing a perceptual correction on the black and white. Likewise with the color. These all have the same pixel value. The red at the top looks quite different than the red on the right. If we do a perceptual correction, then they come in looking much closer. So that's just one example. We look at the contrast sensitivity of the eye. It is a logarithmic curve. It is not linear. In other words, if you have a light source at say 100 nits, and we increase it to 200 nits, you're not going to see twice the brightness. It's very much like the Richter scale. It's very logarithmic, and so we have to remember that when we're going up and down. So the difference between 100 nits and 200 nits is much more than 1,000 and 2,000 nits. So as things get brighter, you can see the curve flattens out and we start seeing less and less differentiation. On the other hand, at the bottom, at the left side, as things get darker, we see a differentiation very quickly. That's why we have, when we encode and record a signal, especially in integers like 10-bit signal, it gives us 1024 steps of gray. We never do it in linear light, or we'd see the problem. We'd have too many representations for the high end. We wouldn't have enough in the low end. We'd see banding. So that's why we typically use, traditionally have used a gamma encoding curve when we digitize. And then more recently, we've used a perceptual quantifier curve, the PQ curve, that was based on the Bartleson model, which more or less matches the sensitivity of the eye. So when we do PQ encoding, it does that. HLG encoding is taking a standard broadcast gamma encoding, and where it falls apart for HDR, because there aren't enough steps, is at the top end and then splicing together a logarithmic curve. So that's in simple terms what an HLG curve is. And one thing I really want to say is that the curves don't define the look. These are handshake space. A lot of people make the mistake, says, well, HLG looks this way, PQ looks this way, 709 looks this way. Well, these are just, yeah, it's a handshake space. You put the inverse transform going in, and you put the complementary transform on the output. Did I see a hand raise? Or, oh no, okay. All right. So, there, if we're seeing differences, this is usually caused by ineffective color management or something going on, and that's it. But if I feed, sounds like the volume's going up, maybe starting to echo, or maybe you brought it up a little bit. Yeah, cool. Is that good? Everybody hear me all right? Yeah, good. Yeah, so anyway, the eye is highly nonlinear. Here's just an example of the Hunt effect. I'm just looking over to see how it looks up here on the screen. So there's a dark scene, and then on the right is uncompensated, and then if we compensate, so you can see that if we don't compensate, it's too colorful. Once again, hard to really, you just see a relative difference. This is not an accurate display, but it gets the point across that that's an important thing to do. So here's an example of a single master process. So we start with a camera. We take the whatever the input signal is, be it a camera, be it display referred to scene referred. And let me stop on that. I don't know how many of you know the difference or the concept of display referred and scene referred. This is often used. Back in the days when everything, you had a 709 camera and you put it on a 709 monitor, or a 601 camera and a 601, or an NTSC camera and NTSC monitor before we even called it 601. It didn't much matter because it was just one flavor. Well, when we talk about display referred and or scene referred refers to the light coming off the camera. In other words, if we take whatever comes out of the back of the camera, it could be log C, it could be Sony S log, it can be red log 3G10, it could be any of these things. All of those relate back to the actual light falling on the camera sensor, and that's a linear process. So the input transform, typically when we go into a processing chain, we unbuild that. We call it unbuilding. We take that off, and we're back to a representation of the light that fell on the sensor, which means that if we pointed two different cameras at the scene, we would, if we have the right, what we call IDT, input device transform, we've unbuilt it, we would end up with the same linear light level or digital code value coming off all the different sensors within the range of that camera. Some cameras can capture a lot more, some cameras capture a lot less. So that's something to remember. But in that common area where they both capture, then it works the same. So we work with that. We work in this common color space. And then we have and then we do our grading. We feed a reference monitor, and we say, okay, there's my master. And then we have the perceptual model and the output transform that takes this wide range and squeezes it down to whatever the deliverable range is. It could be, we could be going out to Rec 709, 100 nits, gamma 2.4. We may want to deliver HLG in the broadcast world. We may want to deliver Rec 2020 PQ for television and things like this for home. All of those should be the same, and that's what this perceptual model does, is it squeezes it down. It takes the color and squeezes it down into, say, from this wide gamut down into 709, or squeezes it to P3. Typically, a deliverable for Rec 20 is for HDR is Rec 2020 PQ on the dramatic side, and so we have this big container, but none of the displays can handle go out to 2020. They typically just sort of stop around P3. And so a typical requirement is to constrain everything down to P3. Well, you could just hard clip everything, gamut clip it, but now we're going to have a lot of errors. We're going to have hue shifts and abrupt changes. So that's what out of gamut mapping is, that we properly in this perceptual space pull it down. We just sort of round down the outer edges so it fits into the container. Here is a single master broadcast workflow that might be interesting to some. That, and actually we've done this. This has been implemented many times. The first test of this workflow was once with the Rose Parade, where we had a bunch of Sony cameras, and we were coming out of the camera CCUs. In that case, we were just coming out S-Log3. We went into we used the S-Log3 into the switcher, and out of the switcher, then we could translate that S-Log3 to SDR and to HDR. And then we had the video controller. He had a separate, well, I show at the bottom with a foot switch, a separate FSHDR. I'll talk about that. And he could then have a preview. So he had his HDR monitor. He could click it, and he would just see SDR inside a 1000-nit Rec 2020 PQ, and then he could see the deliverable. And he was going through as he was setting the camera, setting the exposure, and tweaking the cameras, writing iris, and all this. And he would just go between HDR and SDR. After a little bit of time, he says, "Oh, I just do one. I look at one and set it, and I'm happy with the other." And they do match if you do it properly. And this was really worked out really well for him. And another important thing of these transforms is that if you do push something into the corner, or you do push it out to the outer limits where it's starting, where it hits the wall, that it maintains the color. It perceptually still looks correct. It doesn't just flat line and cause an artifact, have an abrupt color shift, or go pale, white or whatever. It maintains the color. That's one of the advantages in the perceptual model of doing this. So this all works really well for sports. In the SDR, you would have some things clipped out. Yes. No, he was, yes, he was, I'm just trying to think what he was shading. He was shading the cameras. The cameras were outputting. In other words, he had the CCU control of the cameras, and then he would just shade them as he traditionally did. And we were taking the, I believe, the S-Log out of the camera. This was like about 4 or 5 years ago when we did that, but then this has been repeated multiple times. Anyways, one truck with 2 outputs, and in this case, it shows HDR10. I think that's what was going out and being streamed out. It could be HLG, it could be both. But the idea of this, once again, this single master, and it's in, in the VC, the video controller was monitoring in the truck itself, up on the actual camera. The monitors coming out of the switcher were not color for the reference monitor, but the ISO monitors and the individual camera monitors had the ability to show S-Log. They were Sony monitors, so they had some inaccurate picture, but they had a picture on it. That was important. Well, they had, actually, I believe in this case, at this time, the monitors could take native S-Log in and see, it was S-Log 2020 is what was coming out of the camera. And they could preview that on the thing. A lot of time, so they were seeing that. And then in front of the switcher, then they had the reference, an HDR monitor, then they could see. And they were looking at HDR most of the time there. I don't know. I think these were just Sony monitors that natively had a calibration built into them for the S-Log. Just, yeah, I believe that. I can go back and look. But the concept is that you can have a reference monitor. In this case, at that time was an X300. And the VC saw that, and there was also a reference X300 in the production area up on the wall above the switcher. And then there were the different ISO monitors and things, and that color wasn't important on those, just so that they had something that was. He was shading the cameras which were outputting S-Log. Yeah, no. And yeah, so the cameras were being shaded. He was looking at it through the FS HDR, which takes S-Log in, puts out either HDR or SDR. And then that matches what was going out that on the two fixed box coming out. And no, he was shading the cameras, adjusting the exposure, the iris on the camera, only place you can do that. But he was watching it through the FS HDR, which would show him the HDR. That's the same thing that's going to be put out of the truck. And then with the foot switch, you could see the 709 SDR output. Yeah, and the most important thing with any of this is the camera iris itself. I mean, if you have that misset, you only have so much capture range in the camera, and so you have to be spot on that. So, what some of the other things that have been done is with this concept is for some test applications, and we've been testing that. Is what about cinemas even? In the cinema, we typically just deliver a 48-nit master to the cinema, and that's it. Sometimes people watch in try to do a dinner cinema and a dim surround, but as we move, and then things don't match, but we could have local processing to compensate for the viewing conditions in that room. So the testing we've done with that is over at Amazon Studios. They have a, in their one of the test cinemas in Culver City, they have it's about 30 feet, what they call the IWA, a Samsung wall, which is capable of 8K. And there, we've previewed with the room, with the lights up in the room, like for a dinner cinema. Then we turn the ambient compensation up and we have a really good experience. Then we turn the lights down where it's really, really dark. And then we do the ambient compensation for that. And we all have the same feeling. So this is processing that can be done pre-delivery, or this is processing that could be done at the local area. If we think about some of the work that Dolby have done with the Dolby workflow, I don't know how many are familiar with that. It attempts to do some on-set rendering that compensates for the particular nit level of the thing. It's the same type of concept where that's what's in current implementation. Some of the software tools that implement the Colorfront engine. In other words, what we're talking about is one small part of the Colorfront technology, and this has been the image processing in color. It's available. It can plug into other software things, or it can run natively in the Colorfront products. Some of the main things that people use from us is transcoder, which is done mainly for distribution and mastering, and translations, and then onset dailies which is basically the same software, but it's oriented for dailies work that's on set. And the two can handshake. Any color you sit in one can go to the other. And then we have another product that's relevant to this discussion is QC Player, which is a way to view files. And why is and then we say the Colorfront streaming. So this runs PC, Mac, and in the cloud. So as I was touching on the beginning, we're really moving towards this virtual world of workflows. And so any of these products or other grading systems can be running up in the cloud and remotely with the same color management running. All the people who were involved looking at it, when you saw the first wake up pictures here, this was streaming from the cloud, and it was a render that was set for HDR, because this is an HDR capable TV. And the player is just running on this Mac. It could run on a much smaller Mac. This Mac here will run the full transcoder for all the deliverables. It has enough horsepower. So the streaming hardware, there's a piece of hardware that just takes it's a 4-channel device that takes SDI in 4 channels of 4K, so it can have 12G channels in and stream out 4 channels independent. that has the same reference quality, the player technology. And in that you can say, you can do the same color space and same transforms if you want to in that, or just say I'm being fed, say I'm in a cinema grading room and I'm being fed XYZ DCI that's up for my projector. Okay, I want to put that in. Okay, what if I want to watch on a display that doesn't do DCI? Well, then all of that management's handled in the thing. If I'm streaming out HDR as we're doing here, somebody could pick up that stream that's only on an SDR capable device. It's going to do the same color transform that we talked about and collapse the model down into the SDR. So we're all seeing the same thing as best it can be. So that's what's important. And that's the workflow we're moving to. We worked with some of this technology a couple of years ago in Barcelona, where for some of the sporting events where the only people that were out on location, they had permanently wired stadiums for soccer. And the only people that were out there were just the camera operators, and everybody else was out at a central studio. And then there were other people involved, and they had to stream out to these people. So you could have this whole workflow where we're all interconnected. All of our Colorfront products will stream directly out of the unit. Any Colorfront product running, I can just plug a internet into this, and I can be streaming out to anybody. We have a broker service that you invite people. It's all encrypted and approved by all the studios. So that's another interesting. I mean, I could spend a whole night just talking about that part of it, but it's just that's trying to get a ramble around and just sort of give an overview of some of the exciting latest things that we're doing. So why don't I show you some of the stuff? Hardware tools implementing the Colorfront engine. These are the software tools, some of the hardware tools. Here is the FSHDR that's used in broadcast. In fact, there's hundreds of them out there being used. One gentleman asked me, well, I got a thing coming up and I need to out of my truck get HDR and SDR. Here you are. If you have a beautiful SDR master, we can still up map to HDR and go out and you'll be very happy. In fact, in the scenario I was talking about, the Rose Parade, we had all the graphics and stuff were just SDR capable. So how did we integrate that into all this? Well, they went through an FSHDR and were upscaled so that they all would intercut with the HDR, and then they could be downscaled back to SDR and retrieve the same thing. So other hardware tools is the new color box from AGA, which is a very small thing. This can do the same thing, just single channel. For onset and delivery, some of the onset tools, this is the FSHDR is used quite widely on set for previewing. We take a camera in, don't do anything, plug it into a monitor, and I'll show you some of that here. You should have a beautiful wake up picture. Then all the colorist needs to do is say, well, what do we want to do? Do we want a cold scene, a warm scene? Do we want more contrast? Just to tell the story, but you're not sitting there fighting it for half an hour, just trying to, if at the best, just trying to get a default wake up picture. So if you have proper color management, it should work. The whole engine is also this SDK, obviously, and with AGA products, it's integrated in there. Telestream have that in there, and several other people are using this technology. And there's plug-in technology to go into existing color correction systems so that you can have this handshake between all of these. ASUS AMF support through all of this using the Colorfront engine. Thank you for that. And I don't know, any questions on that part before I just show some live stuff here? Yes, yeah, it's integrated there. It's an SDK that's been in the Aja gear, then it's been programmed to run on FPGA with a standard CPU coprocessor, which drives it. And no, nothing. No, when you buy that with the color box, which it's a lower, and then that one you need some licensing. So you have to talk to AGA on that. On the FSHDR, which is a four channels of HD or one single channel of UHD, then that's you buy. It's more expensive. There's no license or anything. It's just ready to go. Yeah, there's a great GUI that people use. You can have one computer and just switch the GUI between different FSHDR, set them up. And the color box also has a web GUI that you can set up. And then that there's a slight license fee to enable the transform, the whole engine in there. But any of you are interested in looking at that, reach out to me and you come in our office, we can go do some detailed things or talk about what kind of implementation would be right for you. So here I've got, let me just, this one so I can see. Yeah, so this is a scene. If we look at it, there's the Colorfront engine running here. I'm just going to make sure I have that brought up. This has already been taken from a camera or whatever and put into a linear color space. I don't know how many are you familiar with ACES and what that is, but it's sort of, in any case, this is just storing the image in EXR files and linear, which is often the way files are passed back. It relates right back to the original image. So in this case, that's what we're starting with, just to show the demonstration. In this case, I'm rendering this image out. It looks pretty enough up there, but we should really be looking at this when I show the. I can render this this scene out as HDR. I'm doing now. I can set the output nit level to 100 nits, and now you'll see a great SDR picture. So the two should match. I mean, we should be in the same ballpark for either one. I can also constrain it to 709. So this is, if I do, let me just show the analyzer here. I'm going to put the analyzer in just so we can see this. Okay. I'm going to put the analyzer color space to HDR. And I'm just going to blow this up because this is important just to see what goes on there. So, so you'll see in this natively, we're constraining just to Rec 2020. The colors don't quite go out there. Some of them do. But if I constrain, say this is going to go, this is 100, rendering at 100 nits. Let's constrain to Rec 709. Then I can go to that. And if we properly constrain, there shouldn't be any difference in the picture. Maybe you'll see something in the red and the green if you watch those because they're inside, but that's constraining it back to 709, but the basic picture doesn't change, which it really shows that most real world scenes, especially that we deal with in broadcasts, since we're shooting very saturated lights or things like this, most colors of real world colors are inside of 709. Some go out, and those are important because they do tell the story. So that's once again, I think very interesting just to see it constrained to 709, and then I go out to what that display over here is capable of, which is P3. And you probably don't see a lot of difference other than just the, maybe you'll see a little deeper green and a little and the red will be a little less orangey. And so if you're doing this constraint, this containment inside of the perceptual processing space, then everything comes in and looks correct. In other words, it doesn't alter the hues or things of the different scenes. If I go down here, I got some live stuff here. Let's look at this scene. This is so this is the new Alexa Alexa 35. I don't know how many of you heard of that. It's probably a camera that has one of the largest capture range. And this is pretty much just, get a better frame, a default picture, just default. Nothing's, it's ungraded. It's just hitting the knobs, and sure, we can go in and color grade it. We can change the color temperature. We can change some different aspects. Another thing that's available if we're dealing with what we call scene referred. So let's get back to that. Scene referred, this is an important concept, is what comes from the camera. Display referred is after we've manipulated it, added a look, and we're seeing it in a display space. And I see a hand raised there. There is, in this, it's the equivalent of saying, okay, we're LUTing it, but that isn't what's going on inside here. Once again, the camera, that what comes out of the area camera is log C4, area wide gamut 4, and that's coming in and being unbuilt back into a linear space. In other words, it's this huge what we call AP0. That's an term from the Academy. It's a really large container. If you see the graph up here, it would be outside of, it would be a square that goes all the way up around here. So it's this large color space, and it's a linear light that goes above 1. And we're all always familiar with video and things going from 0 to 1, 1 being the maximum brightness. Well, this goes up to 80,000 or so. So you can cover really bright sun peaks, more than what you're going to get out of any camera. CGI, we can generate those values, but more than what comes out of a camera. And what this does is it then takes that into this linear space. We apply what we call a look. In other words, when we're photographing something with a camera, we don't want to replicate, or we can't replicate, number one, the dynamic range of a real scene. Even if we sat in a dark room, we had a window cut out and we're looking outside. If we were we would see just that single stimulus through that window. It would look very flat. We like to have some contrast, and we need to emphasize different parts of the image. That's why we add a curve or some kind of contrast. So that's what the look does. In some jargon, it's called an OOTF, optical transform. In other words, we come in and we do some manipulation. In the most simplistic terms, a gamma is added. We've always traditionally done that, and then we go out to the display with some kind of a curve or a gamma put to it. These looks that are in here are much more complex. When you apply a look, you have to also be aware of the HK effect. The HK effect is that when we look at different colors, when they're bright, they look at different brightness to our eyes, and that doesn't look good. So that, in these models, it normalizes that. So you end up with a balanced picture that looks good. For example, I can take this scene. I can do a number of different things. I can go to the look, and I can say, okay, we have what we call master look on there. I can go to an actual sampled Fujifilm look and see it looks very different. The highlights go yellow. This is actually from measured Fujifilm years ago. It's not what? Yep. And then I can go to, let me go to one that's much more dramatic. We'll go to a bleach bypass look. Yeah, you have to get close. I mean, how many colorists do we have here? Oh, I mean, if you're a colorist, you're looking at fine detail. I mean, these are pretty broad things, and we can go back to the default look, which is master look. We can go to a more colorful version of it, which looks nice in this scene, which is master look vivid. And you see that really brings out the colors. But this is not saturation. If we tried to do that with saturation, it would just fall apart. And this is actually a colorfulness aspect in the look file. We can go to one this is used as a default look in the FS HDR for broadcast. There's a master look broadcast here. And that's a typical curve, lower contrast curve and open curve, and the color saturations that are typical for broadcasts. And this was designed by measuring the average good parts of a lot of cameras transfers that are coming out on a good day, and averaging and then putting them in a proper perceptual space so that we can make that. Anyway, this is one of the defaults. That's what you get in the FSHDR as a wake up color space for broadcast type things. And it looks different than for dramatic. If we go back to the dramatic, we can just go back and just put the master look there. Yeah, and then we have there. So some of the other things we can do digitally across all cameras have the same thing. We can adjust optical exposure. What's really great with this is if you've done an over-under test with the camera where you've gone up +1 stop, I go -1 stop here, and as long as the lens is properly calibrated in T-stops, transmission stops, this is going to negate it, and it really works well. If you try to do that with grading tools, you never get there because the grading tool is a different thing. It's not meant to work in scene linear exposure like this is. We can also, another thing, is the relative color temperature. So we're talking about the Rose Bowl. Actually, one thing that was being ridden was color temperature because of, and that's one thing that changes throughout the day. As the sun rises, it gets colder, and then as it sets, it gets warmer. So you can compensate for that. And some of the other things is the amount of HDR-ness we want in the scene. We can remember we were talking about the bright window. We can dim that down, but it doesn't. You can see what's happening on the scope. It doesn't change the color. The colors remain constant in there. So that's the right tool for doing that. And then we talked about colorfulness, the Hunt effect. We can override that if we want to make it a much more colorful or less colorful scene. And it's once again, that's not saturation. And then in this case, there's many other outputs that I can be using that are I could be going to HLG. If I had the time, I could then put this TV in HLG and you'll see the exact same picture because it's a mathematical translation. That's the thing I always remind people that cameras themselves don't have a look, and neither do color transmission color spaces. They don't have a look. They are containers, and a camera doesn't have an inherent look. If you unbuild all the way back to the sensor, they're all getting the same light on it. Some will distort things at certain points where they run out of steam. Some will have a sharper image than the others. Some will have more flare internally, but other than that, they're all going to look, they're going to look the same. So that's an important thing to remember. So I think I covered a lot of the things, the importance of managing color so that we can distribute to a wider range of displays. It's like I showed here that we can do a render to 1,000 nits. We can do a render to, I just type it in there, 100 nits. That's how that looks. If you were to look in the cinema, here's 48 nits. Your eyes are it's gonna look really dark. I don't know how it looks, but yeah, it looks pretty dark. Yeah, but that's as bright as you'd be in the cinema, but that's a big screen. Your eyes are adapted to that dark room, and so it works, but it's still pale. No matter what you do, it's pale to what you can see in the home on an HDR when it's properly done. So, and one comment on HDR, a lot of times it's not properly done, and a lot of people hate it. And I know when I did some of this talk, I don't know how long ago, but it was up at the Castaway, so that sort of predates it. Yeah. Anyway, at that time, I think it fell, a lot of the stuff I talked about and the multiple masters and things fell on, wasn't a lot of interest. At that time, we were still mostly SDR. I think this might have been 2013, 14, something in there. And as HDR, well, that's just another trend that's going to go away. That was the main thing that people said, but it didn't. And it's just like 3D. Well, 3D probably should. I mean, sometimes it looks good, but HDR, certainly you can be in the back of the room and look at a display and you can tell the difference. I can't tell the difference on that display whether I were feeding it HD or UHD, unless you get really close, unless you have the content that does it, but certainly dynamic range is king. I mean, that is the most important thing that we all can do as far as improving the picture quality, is getting that dynamic range. And in the cinema, probably one of the best implementations to date has been the extended dynamic range that Dolby Cinema have done. And instead of bright, because bright is hard to do with a projector, it's twice as bright. It's 108 nits versus 48 nits. But what to do, it's all about increasing the dynamic range, is that it gets black, really black. And if you've ever walked into a Dolby Cinema, you'll know, I mean, it is pitch black. I mean, they try to get it because and your eyes will adapt to it and you see a much higher dynamic range picture. And the reason, and that requires in a normal cinema, 2 projectors with laser light engines. The way the projectors work is just that there are 2 modulators. A normal cinema projector has roughly, at best, and for mastering, we say they should have 2001 contrast minimum in post-production mastering. When you go into the cinema, it's usually less than that, maybe 1800 to 1. So say 1800 to 1, but if you multiply 1800 times 1800, so that's what they do is stack two modulators in there, eats up a tremendous amount of light, but you get that really wide contrast range. That's why they look so good. So the next trend in the industry, I mean, the next thing we have to do in the industry, there is some interim technology with from Barco with light steering, which takes the same amount of light we have here, and if there's only certain areas of the scene that are bright, it actually takes that light and steers it to that one area and makes it brighter. So you get a higher dynamic range experience from that. But to get true HDR, then we need emissive walls. And I was just telling some of the people I was sitting at the table that we've been working. There's a really good example. We've worked with the Onyx display from Samsung. There was actually a test cinema set up in Chatsworth. We did a lot of testing there. And just looked, wonderful. What we would do is we would use the reverse of the Colorfront engine, and we would start with some decent 48 nit cinema trailers and cinema content, and then we would reverse map it up to the 300 nits at that wall, and it was just phenomenal. In fact, we had the ASC there one day, and everybody was poo-pooing it, and they saw that and said, "That's the movie I want to watch." Because if you do it right, I mean, and I understand because I've seen so much bad remapping, so much bad HDR where we just turn some knobs and try to brighten things up, and it doesn't work. I mean, I think if you give a colorist enough time or enough weeks or months, you could probably do enough tricks and matting and windowing and stuff and get something that actually is a pleasing look. But you should be able to get there without doing any of that, and then just do some trimming if you need to. But that would really look good. And then since mid last year, Amazon have set up on their at the Culver City lot over there where they are in the what used to be the Lamely cinemas, the IWA wall, and this is an 8K wall that is more than twice the number of pixels DPI of the Onyx display, so you don't see individual dots, you don't get the moire effects. And it goes up to 1,000 nits, and it's 8K capable. So talking about technology, we had just a little M1 Mac, and then the other time a little Mac laptop. The streaming thing I was showing you, we had running up in Amazon Cloud some red footage that was playing back the red raw files, doing the processing to 8K, putting just the default Colorfront pipeline, all the things like the perceptual processing on it, and rendering it out as 1,000 nits. And this little tiny computer was filling the cinema wall with live 8K over public internet, and it's pretty good. That system uses a lossless, perceptually lossless HEVC format inside as far as the codec. That's one of the most efficient ones we found for utilizing the bit depth. But that's sort of where we're headed in the future. If we look at audio, what I always say is look at audio. How do most people consume audio? Most people consume audio not in a concert hall or something. It's usually on different devices in the home stuff. But when you do go to a major event, it is stunning. You really make a thing. The same thing with cinema. Right now, I can go home and watch something in HDR, and it could be pretty stunning if it's done right. I go to the cinema, and it's not. I mean, the story usually carries it, and we have a lot of experience on how to get the best we can out of the experience with the palette we have to work with. But when you see the ability of these large walls, they won't be prolific. In other words, you won't see them on every corner. But I think where we're headed is that we'll have some very high quality ones in central areas that you can go to and have this stunning performance. So anyway, I don't know if there's some more questions or anything. I sort of rambled around. I hope it all makes sort of sense. I could spend more time organizing, boom, 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 but I just thought, let's do it this way.
Here, and I'm gonna bring a mic over to anybody who have questions, so that way our friends on Zoom can hear the question.
Right there.
And say your name and where you are.
John Svetlik at Pixelogic Media.
We know you guys.
So curious about HDR down to SDR, I think is perhaps more straightforwardly mathematically done than
HDR to SDR?
SDR to HDR. I mean,
Show you,
if you-
well,
if
you
you-
just keep
if-
talking and I'm gonna show
yeah,
you.
well, I guess
Yeah.
my question is, I've
Uh-huh.
heard before that, conversions, taking an SDR source from, I don't know, 20 years ago and trying to bring it up to HDR is
Well,
more challenging, but how is that, how do you guys handle that? And what,
Yeah.
what kind of results are you?
well,
getting?
that's really good. We did a co-presentation at, yeah, I'm just gonna shrink this down. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we did a, presentation, along with Dolby, because Dolby's been very interested in that and with old archive footage, our legacy content, or stuff that just exists in HDR. We did this paper at HPA, and upmapping works, if you use this same engine, works extremely well. And it's just, and in fact, what I was going to show you, I can probably take this thing. I am going to down map it to just 100 nits. So I'll just go out, output 100 nits, 100. Okay, so that's a darker picture. Okay, now I can take that 100 nit and re-up map it. If I put another node in there, I'll just go here, just bear with me. This is all a node-based pipeline, so you can just, once you get the hang of it, as an engineer, you'll have a lot of fun. So I'll put another engine in there. Then I'm just going to set this one for Rec 2020 PQ. Don't look at it now because I'm putting out 709. I'm going to go back to 2020. So if I take the input that back down to 100, now we've effectively, I think I did it right. Does it look right? Yeah. So that effectively just remapped it back up. And in fact, you say, I don't believe you. I can take this. I'm going to take this out. I'm going to get rid of it. I don't need a burn-in. And I'm going to put a split node. And this is something I like to always show. That's going to go split. I'm going to do, and then I'm going to duplicate this one. And I'm going to put it out to make sure it's 1,000 nit. So this is original 1,000 nit. And then I'll put that on the other side of the split. And there probably will be on the extremities, maybe something, but this gives you an idea. This mouse is weird on this one. Okay, there we are. Okay, so if I go here and I can make this as AB, so that's the original. And that's the remapped. So, so that's going to down to SDR and back up to HDR, and then here is just the original rendered out original. So you can see it returns very well and recovers it, maintains the colors, and that's what's essential. That's the thing is that so legacy content, obviously, if it's has a lot of video artifacts, those will just be brighter video artifacts. That's not always pleasing. That's where we have this HDR amount roll-off control that you can turn down where it doesn't push it as aggressively and it can hide some of those artifacts. That works really well. We get every kind of material sent to us and people are trying it and everything, but for most stuff, it works really well. Like I said, on the Amazon wall or on the Onyx display, we were taking cinema trailers that were 48 nits and bumping them up to the 300 nits that the Onyx display could do, and it just looked fantastic. And so anyway, that's very effective, works well. That's why in broadcast, if you happen to have a really good looking HDR truck, the trick is, what we found when we were doing that is in the cameras, don't let them hard clip, because hard clipping, you can't recover anything, it looks bad. But if you set it to a soft clip, soft knee on the top end, when on your camera output, most modern cameras can do that, where you don't have things clipped, then you can reverse map it back up to HDR. You get a really good looking HDR deliverable out of that. Yeah, that is key. And I, challenge or invite any of you, if you've got some workflows that do that, reach out to us. I didn't put it up on the screen, but it's bill@colorfront.com. You can find Colorfront.com on the web.
as just a web page, but all the addresses and things are there. But yeah, just reach out to me, bill@colorfront.com. If you got any applications or things, be glad to talk to you about it. I get excited about this stuff because it's what I've done for the last 20 years or so, is really focus on color and things and try to solve problems that ever since I've started with have been there, and now we've got technology and things to help solve those. So
Cool. I think we have time for 2 more questions. If anybody has anything that they think pertains to the whole group, otherwise, I think Bill will be here for a couple minutes. All right, coming over.
come on down.
Hi, thank you. Thomas Minari, Sohonet.
Yes.
Obviously, the proprietary perceptual transforms are very impressive, but I've been following the work that the AMPAS ACES 2.0
Yeah.
output transform working group are doing. And how would you say your goals differ or
Well,
aligned?
I sit in on those meetings. I know all the people work on that. Every time there's a new iteration, I try it out and give them some feedback. And I think this has been doing it for a lot longer. This is a group that, and our approach is different. I mean, the perceptual, I mean, there is a concept of a perceptual model inside of the 2.0. They are certainly way better than the existing 1.0 ACES, where I was talking about the different ODTs not matching. There is a better attempt, but I think the real test is put up some real world images and look at the HDR and the SDR, and then look what we do and see what they are, I think. And then also you have to look for artifacting. You should be able to turn any knob in a color corrector and not produce an artifact unless the color corrector itself is clipping up. But most modern, like Resolve and other color correctors, are floating point devices and have an extended range. So if you have a proper color pipeline like this, you can turn knobs and not produce an artifact. You might produce an ugly picture, obviously, if you make it green or make it too bright. But the colorist should be able to look at the monitor, not have to look at a scope and turn any knob. You don't have to worry about going out of gamut if it's properly managed. I see this all the time. People use our QC player all the time for QCing deliverables, where they say it has to fit within 1,000 nits inside of the 10,000 nit container. It has to fit inside of P3. That should never even be a question if you have the proper color pipeline. But we see that all the time. Good for us. We sell QC players, but people trying to do that, and then they get to reject it and go back and somebody fix it, but or run through our software that will then properly map it back in. But yeah, I mean, that's all the reason to have the right pipeline. You should be able, as a colorist, to adjust things, to look at your reference monitor. As long as you got a reference monitor, set the picture you want aesthetically, and everything else is going to be fine. And you're going to be good across all the different deliverables. And then you can soft proof or preview those different deliverables as you're grading. If you want to see that, you can see an SDR render and an HDR render and make sure you're happy with them both.
All right, thanks.
Cool. Any one last question? Anybody with one more? All right. Let's see.
Just curious if it's available on any other hardware other than the FSHDR.
Telestream has a limited set going from HDR to SDR, and I believe the reverse in Telestream. But the people that really have addressed that have been AGA. The SDK is available, and we're talking to people who may want to implement it in their hardware. And then from AGA has been the FSHDR, which is more pricey, 4 channels of HD, so you can split it if you're only doing HD and have 4 independent channels. There is the new AGA color box, which is just a single channel with way less money, and it's 1 channel, and it will pass UHD, so you can go 3840. So that's a new device that basically does all the same thing as the FSHDR. But people use FSHDR for audio delay. They use it for a lot of other things that it has. The color box is strictly for dealing with color. So if that's what your main goal is assign the color, that's a good product to look at. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bill.
Yeah, you're
Can we
welcome.
give one more round of hand?
You're welcome. Yeah. Good to see all my friends here that I hadn't seen for a while. Yeah.
All right. Bill, one more time, what was your email address?
It's Bill. It's Bill@colorfront.com.
All right.
So it's very complicated.
Perfect. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We hope you'll be here next month, June 22nd. Yeah, we'll see you then. Thank you.
Quick question. Yeah, we've talked before, yeah. 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 Huh? Yeah. Yeah.